Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Gaslit Truth podcast. This is another consumer story that we're going to be talking about today, and I'm super pumped about it because I love bringing in consumers. Actually, people who've been around the block and have returned is the deal.
Made it back.
They've made it back.
Yeah.
So make sure that you like and follow us across all the social medias, Instagram, YouTube, and all the things. And you might want to head over to YouTube for this one because I don't know. I don't know if we're showing anything on this one. Maybe not. I don't know.
It's gonna be good. I mean, if you're not on YouTube yet, you may as well
You
be on
should
YouTube.
go there
So
anyway
you can
because
see
you'll
what
see
Terry
us.
and I look like. Like you have
That's
to put
right.
a face with the voices.
It's like
I mean,
those
it's very
radio
important.
personalities that you just don't know what they look
Those
like until
damn
you get
people that do radio.
You see them on a billboard and you're like, that's not what I expected.
I know.
Anywho, here we are, and we are going to welcome our guest right now.
Yeah, we're gonna welcome Miss Renee. Welcome to the show, Renee.
Welcome to the show.
Schulz-Jacobson.
Yes, thank you.
Earlier, it was the shit show. Welcome to the shit show.
It was a
of
shit
today.
show. We should have been recording from the beginning because we are having a lot of problems. But then we brought in discussions about the water bra, so it turned out to be just fine.
Yes, just fine.
I mean, if that
And
doesn't perk anybody up.
Good
But
morning.
I don't know.
Welcome to the shit show, Renee.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Good morning.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for having me. And
Thanks.
I can't say much about the boob situation. So.
But
Yeah.
she likes the shit show. It's
I
good.
do. I'm here for it.
She's
part of
here
what
for it.
Thank
All right.
goodness. All right. Well, everybody, I wanna read. I'm gonna read off something because of course I can't memorize these things, but we want to tell the world a little bit about you, Renee, before we get started. Okay. So for everybody that is joining us, our guest today, Renee Schulz-Jacobson, began a slow medically supervised taper, off a Klonopin, which is, as we know, a commonly prescribed anti-anxiety med. And she had taken it exactly as prescribed for 7 years.
Wow.
And then shortly after that last bit, Renee started to experience hundreds of terrifying physical, emotional, psychological, cognitive symptoms, endured neuropathy, seizures, memory problems, emotional dysregulation, digestive issues, none of which were present prior to taking that medication. And so for Renee, it was a piece of never thinking that you could heal. And so disabled for years, she started painting as a way to distract herself from the withdrawal symptoms that she was forced to endure. And then here we are a decade later, rebuilding a life from the bottom up, integrating a new mindset, a new diet, a new worldview, and an entirely new support system, which we're going to hear a little bit about today. Today, Renee is an independent artist whose artwork lives in private collections all over the world, and it is really cool. That's not in the bio, but I have looked at some of it. I think it's just so beautiful. The colors just are beyond vibrant. That's my little piece in there. In addition to offering in-person and online classes, Renee is a certified peer recovery advocate. She supports people on all stages of their deep prescription journey. A published author, her memoir, Psychiatrized, Waking Up After a Decade of Bad Medicine, contemplates the cost of compliance and exposes the truth about the dangers associated with these psychiatric drugs, psychotropic drugs, including misunderstood and debilitating neurological dysfunction, which does affect thousands of men and women worldwide upon the cessation of psychiatric drugs. So it has become a part of Renee's life mission to educate the public, the doctors especially, about the dangers associated with psychiatric drugs. And she believes patients need to be fully informed of the risks involved before agreeing to take any drugs, which might impact your brain chemistry. Renee, welcome to the Gaslit Truth.
Thank you. Thank you for that nice intro. And I'm really happy to be here. Actually, I love what you two are doing. It's good stuff.
Well, I was watching your face as Jen is doing the intro, and the only thing that I thought of was, did that even feel like you? Did it feel like you, or did it take you back to a place?
Yeah, it did take me
Yeah.
back to a place. When you read the symptoms,
Yes.
it still chokes me up because the level of disability. When I'm a coach now and people say, I just can't explain it. I just can't explain it. And I explain it as an invisible personal Holocaust because you are stuck in a torture chamber and there's no escape. It never stops. Most people can't sleep. And the symptoms are just so intense and they're invisible. So it's invisible torture chamber. During other things, people can see that there's a gun on you, or that you're being zapped, or if you hear, or if you have cancer, people can see you sitting there and they're putting stuff inside of you. This,
Right.
you look pretty fine, and it's just invisible. It's really your own personal seventh circle of hell.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
Well, and that's the harder part about like damage from psychiatric interventions, right? Because you can't see. I mean, for some people, there we have these outward signs that are
Mhm.
shown, and so for those cases, it's almost like, okay, well, I can see something is going on. But for somebody who is going through the chemical changes in the brain and the feelings that you go through, those symptoms that just can't be outwardly seen, it's really hard when you are even with providers to be able to explain that in a way that they can understand, because they're not seeing oftentimes a physical manifestation of these symptoms, right?
Correct.
But so it's one of those things that makes it even more difficult. It's like people don't believe you almost
Yeah.
until you know.
Right. And so that's why I have all different ways of explaining it, and, try to, like, it's like being invisibly chemically concussed,
Mhm.
like it is a
Yes.
brain injury. And if you had, an MRI of what a concussion is, the lights are too light, the sound is too loud. There's all different kinds of symptoms that go along with that. If you have if someone shoots you through your brain, there's impairment, but you don't have the hole that you can actually see. So I do
Yeah.
talk about it in that way. And in fact, a lot of the modalities for healing are not, unlike things that you would do for somebody who's coming through like actually brain
Like a
injury.
TBI.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Exactly.
that's
Yes.
Mhm.
that helps providers, but it is. I mean, I've certainly been in those situations myself. It's maddening when someone tries to tell you there's just no way that you could still be experiencing this after all this time. It's just not possible. And it's like,
Yeah.
But yet it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Go to YouTube. You'll see what you
Get
just
on
did on
YouTube.
YouTube.
yeah, double
Got it
flipping
all.
bird there.
The double I
Yeah.
will join you. Let's put our
Oh, yeah.
fingers
I
up
wish
in
I wish
solidarity.
I had my Fuck
That's
Lexapro
right.
cup in front of
Yep.
me that I was holding a few podcasts ago, that because when you
Yes.
say that, Renee, I the the world cannot seem, unless you go through this, it's a very subjective experience, right? But yet so many people have it. When you just made the comment about like sights and sounds and things, like I went through this myself a couple weeks ago, and was literally sitting outside feeling like the breeze was too breezy. Like
Right.
the sensation of feeling wind on me was so overwhelming. And I'm looking at people and looking around me going, I must be fucking crazy,
Yeah.
because the rest of the world sitting at the baseball game with me is perfectly fine, and I'm sitting here going, I need to go shelter myself because the sensation of touch right now coming from breeze is too much for me. Um and I try to explain it to people, and they're kind of just like, oh boy,
Okay,
like
weirdo.
maybe you need to
Sure.
stop doing
Let's
your med
we don't go
titration.
Yeah,
there.
well, that's just
Yeah,
it. That's
yeah,
just it, what Jen just said.
yeah,
Other people, you mention these things to people and they'll be like, "Maybe you need to be on this
yeah.
medication."
Maybe you need to
You
stop your
know?
titration. Like
Yeah.
maybe that's not okay. That's actually kind of like a psychotic symptom that's happening to you when you think the breeze
It's
feels
too
like too
breezy.
much. It's too
Mhm.
breezy. And so that's, at least for me, when you say that, I can resonate with that. I think there's a lot of people that are listening to this podcast as well that can resonate with these just undescribable symptoms, right?
Yeah, and I would just add so not to throw my brother under the bus, but my brother's a doctor, and when I was going through
Ooh.
this,
Yeah,
I
he's
called.
already under the bus,
Yeah,
Renee.
guess he's in front of it.
I'm
Sorry.
no, I'm
Sorry,
kidding.
but it's like a Mack
Sorry,
truck.
Eric, but
Sorry, bro.
when I was going through this, I called him, and I told him what was going on, and he said exactly what you said, which is, I got to tell you, Renee, this is evidence that you need more medication,
Oh
not
my
less.
god.
See, it's just like, oh gosh, this gives
Does
me
he
chills
say
down
that
my body.
today? Does he say
Talk.
that now?
No, so we didn't talk for a long time after that.
Okay.
But in the years
Yeah.
past, with all the new information that's come out and all this, I mean, it's been a decade now, 11 years it'll be.
Mhm.
And he actually wrote me, I'm getting choked up. He wrote me a beautiful letter apologizing and saying he was sorry. This is nothing he was trained in. He's not a psychiatrist. He's not, that's not what he does. but he was like, it's just nothing he had ever heard of. So
Not that I wanna talk about your brother on here, but is he like a general practitioner, family practitioner, or something else? What is he?
he's the chief of staff, and
Oh, can he come on the podcast?
no, he would not do
Oh,
that.
he won't do it.
No.
Well, if he's listening, this is an open invitation.
Yep.
We'll put a bag on his head or something, for him
Yeah,
to
I
come
mean,
on.
we
No,
could.
I understand why he
Yeah.
can't do that, but, it's very interesting
I've
though
asked him to, by the way, to do things like that.
Oh,
Oh, I believe, yeah, I
he
believe it.
can't.
Yeah, we're
There's no way he
waiting
can.
for those people to come, which is kind of like our like little plug to go, hey, okay, anybody listening that may be in a position like that, come on, because it is, you just said it too, Renee. You just said like not being educated in it, or not like having that knowledge of it. And then you said, he's not a psychiatrist. And I would beg to fire back with that and say, and even if he was, guess what? Us three women right here probably know more about how to safely deprescribe. I haven't met a psychiatrist yet that has been able to actually meet me toe to toe and have that conversation with me.
Oh,
Not
I
to
haven't.
luckily, I do know some, so I'm happy to
Great.
shoot some names your way after
Get
this.
them on here, because let's
Get 'em-
go. Like, it would be great for the world to see that there are psychiatrists out there that are safe,
There
that are
are.
fully safe, that can see the
Yep.
whole picture, that you can actually talk to, that are going to that have the understanding of, guess what, that wind hitting you the way it is. Yes,
Yep, I believe you.
that's a symptom of withdrawal. Here's
I-
what's happening in your brain.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well, and I also wanna just add in there, the majority of psychiatric medication is not prescribed by psychiatry.
that's true.
So, there's and that is where also big disconnect in
It
education,
is. It
right?
is.
So that's
And
big.
I guess all I was saying is he's not someone who has ever prescribed any of these medications, just
Sure.
not
Mhm.
the type of medicine he practices.
Right.
So, he didn't pick psych as a specialty. It wasn't
Mhm.
anything that he ever, he's just like,
Yeah,
that's
but most of these
my realm.
prescribers don't.
Right,
Most of the prescribers nowadays do not pick psych as a
right.
specialty,
Yep.
but yet they still prescribe lots and lots of hardcore
Sure.
things to people.
Yeah.
But Renee, can I just back your story up a little bit?
Sure.
'Cause I wanna hear how you ended up getting on
Yeah.
medication in the first
Yeah,
place,
how'd
if
that
you're willing
Klonopin
to
start?
share. Yeah, how did that
Yeah.
start?
It's
Yeah,
it's an ugly one.
it
Well,
always is ugly.
so I'm gonna go, like, every time I try to tell this story, I try to just keep it short. But as you know, these
Don't
things
keep it short.
they have tentacles that go back into our
Mhm.
childhood or whatever. So I would just say that, as a woman in the United States, growing up in the 70s and 80s, boy, did we get sold a bad bill of goods.
Mhm. Yes, we did.
The food that we were told is good for us isn't good for us. Lucky Charms, they're magically delicious.
Yes, they
They
are
were
magically
magically
delicious.
delicious, by the
So
way.
delicious, pure poison, right?
Are.
But like, and all the Swanson's dinners that made it easier for
Mhm.
our
Oh,
mothers, and the McDonald's, and like just the nutrition, and was not there. And then just this idea that like better living through pharmaceuticals. Like, if I could tell you the
Mhm.
number of times that people told me how lucky we are that we live in this country where we have access to medication. So that's a story that I grew up hearing. I will also confess, I grew up in a Jewish, very religious family. And, there's that stereotype of like, oh, you'll marry a Jewish doctor one day, right? Oh, it's like that's
ah,
that's the highest place that you could
Mhm.
go, is that you land a Jewish doctor. So that was a lot of religious dogma that I grew up with, that like, I will be the wind beneath his wings.
Mhm.
Um,
oh,
that like,
Sounds so
that
beautiful, like, oh.
oh, Bette Midler, you sound great, Bet.
no,
Just so you
not
know.
yeah, I was supposed to repopulate, like, it
Oh
very,
gosh.
very important to be chaste and a virgin, all those kinds of things, and this is not that long ago,
No.
I know. This is not the 20s,
I
the
know,
This is the
1900s.
but
'80s. She's talking about the
well,
'80s,
I
right?
was born in '67, but this was the
Yep.
Yeah.
story.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so, what happened is I went to a summer camp, and I was raped in 1985, that summer,
Mm.
by somebody who was 5 years older than I was. I was 17. And so I was not yet in college, and he was graduated from college. We had very different expectations about what was happening with us.
Mhm.
And I came home from after that experience, I told my friends what had happened. They literally couldn't hear me. It was like their responses were, "Oh my God, you guys had sex. That's so cute." And I kept saying,
Mm.
it wasn't, there was no word for that then. There was no word because I knew him. I had thought rape was like with a gun or a knife with a stranger in the alley. So everyone just kept telling me it was so cute that like I had done this and it was great. And I was like, it wasn't great. You guys aren't hearing me. I didn't want to. And it just, so anyway, it wasn't like he stopped to use a condom or anything. So I went home. I was supposed to go to college about 2 weeks later. It was. I went home. I did not get a period. It wasn't like he took care of that or anything. So, that was not happening. There was not that
Mhm.
dynamic. So, I had to tell my mother. And I told my mother, and her response was like, it's so weird. Like when you're asking if I can even believe this is my life. When I read about this, I have I have so much indignation. But when it was my own mother, she shamed me. She was like,
Mhm.
"Why were you out? What were you wearing? You must have done something to give him the idea that you were interested in that." And then of course she said, "We have to tell your father." And my dad and I are besties. Like he is my best friend to this day. He is my bestie. And I knew he would think that I was, a I was worried he was going to think I was a bad girl, that I
Mhm.
wasn't chaste, that I was not a virgin anymore, that I was ruined the way my mother said I was ruined. And we went in the kitchen, and I'll never forget it. He was doing a crossword puzzle and eating a tangerine, which is what he does every single night. And my mother said, "Go ahead and tell him what happened." And I was crying, and I told him, and this is really like his response to me was so interesting because we didn't talk about it until decades later. But what the reason why he did this is totally differently than the way I received it. But in the moment, he heard me. He put down his pen and he put his head down on the paper, like on the newspaper. So like he just put his head down. And how would you guys feel like if your dad did that? What I'm just
Like
curious.
he was disappointed
Yeah.
in
Right?
me.
Yeah. I
That's
did
Mhm.
something wrong.
I internalized that as total disappointment. He
Mhm.
couldn't even look at me.
Right.
Couldn't even look at me. That is not what he was feeling, by the way. He told me a decade later, after we discussed this as adults many years later, he felt like he had failed me as a parent.
Sure.
He felt like he
Mhm.
didn't protect me. He's the one that sent me to that summer camp, and he felt horrible. So I did not register that at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, and so I told him I was sent to, so here's where we go. I was sent to the doctor the next day for pregnancy testing, for AIDS testing,
Mm.
because this
Yep.
was 1985, right in the
Sure.
middle.
Right.
And so for me, what got sort of sticky for me is that you do something bad happens, you go to the doctor, and then the doctor will check you, and you may need some kind of treatment or medication,
Sure.
and you need to trust you trust your doctor there. So I went to the doctor, and it was like I was not pregnant. I had to be tested repeatedly for AIDS for the first. I went every 6 months to do these checks or whatever. I think it was even 3 months for the first 6 months. So it was like 3 months and then a year after everything was clear. And then I had this like sigh of relief of like, oh my God, like I'm okay. Um, I felt like I was okay physically.
Mhm.
Never
Mhm.
went and got therapy. Never.
I wanna bring this up though because I'm an '80s girl too, graduated in '87, and, well, EMDR wasn't even a thing, I think,
No.
until '86, maybe
Yeah.
later,
Yep.
but it wasn't a research thing,
Mm-mm.
that's just when she, like, discovered it, but trauma treatment wasn't really a thing. I mean, we're talking our parents
Yep.
anyways, mine, Vietnam vet, right? Like, so
Right.
era of war,
Keep it
yeah.
in. Keep it in.
Yeah,
Talk about
and my grandparents too, World War II vet, like, Korean War, World War II, like,
Yep. The
trauma as it
Yeah,
stands
even those
today.
words weren't used. Like, this
No,
vernacular didn't exist.
it did
Like,
not.
this no.
There
Mm-mm.
was not. And
No.
by the way, I wanna say, like, your lived experience of, your first sexual encounter like that is so familiar,
Common.
so familiar to especially well, I mean, I'm sure women of today too, but especially back in that time. Like, it was very similar to my own. And I didn't recognize that as a traumatic thing then
Right.
either. It was like your rite of passage, and that's just how it goes down. And you're just supposed to be like that. And it got me thinking about, do you remember that movie by Jodie Foster, The Accused?
Mhm.
That was the first movie about rape, about someone being raped, that I can recall bringing it into the mainstream, as far as like, it's not about what you wear, it's not about all those things, because as women, that's what we were told. Well, you deserved it in some way. And then, oh, you're medically cleared, move on,
Mhm.
put on my
Over.
treatment.
Yep.
It's now over. I don't want to hear about it anymore. You shouldn't talk about it anymore. And yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I
Very
know that
interesting.
now because obviously I have, as a sidebar, this is an interesting one. So I've had almost 600 clients. Do you want to guess the number of people who report having sexual trauma?
Oh, I'm gonna say it's like 85 to
599.
90%. 90%.
Everyone but three.
Oh, well, I was close. Yeah,
Yeah,
I should play the lottery today. Yeah,
everyone.
no,
You
I
should.
believe it. Mhm.
Everyone but three, and even those three, they don't call it trauma, so you have to go by that. But they don't. But one of those people has like sexual identity issues. Like
Mhm.
so there was some stuff going on there that it was making some imprinting.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is fascinating to me. That
Mm.
that early childhood experience, even just one time, it's a predictor of who may end up on these. Having a later situation where they end up prescribed anti-anxiety, antidepressants. It's like a
Yeah.
predictor. So we have to get in there to help people lose the
Yeah.
stigma, the shame around sexual trauma. And
Yeah.
and again, I will say this was one event for me. I think about women who have repeated
Yeah.
events or grow up in situations. So it's like a single event can change your
Mhm.
whole life.
Sure.
Mhm.
So anyway, the idea was you're fine, right? You can go right to college. We don't
Yep.
have to stop the show. And honestly, I was like ready. I went to college and I did all the things in the order. I was a good student and I made friends and all that. All that. But and the backstory of it, I had a lot of fear. I didn't go to fraternity parties.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't
Oh,
drink
sure.
ever because there was alcohol involved in that previous thing. Not me, not by me, but he
Mhm.
smelled like alcohol. So the smell of alcohol in a fraternity freaked me out. I didn't want to be around people that were drinking. And so I became basically like a bookworm and a very, and so that's kind of that early workaholism stuff that like my coping skill was study, be a good girl, get good grades.
Mhm.
And that was my primary coping skill was that like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go to the library and read. So I did
Mhm.
that for a long time. Well, that helped me to graduate with high honors and, cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa. And that brought me to the next place in my life where I went to graduate school and continued that same trajectory of like work hard, get good grades to get to the next place. Anyway, I ended up meeting a Jewish doctor.
All
I
your dreams came
All
true.
my
Oh,
dreams were
fixed.
manifesting,
Fixed.
or all my
Yeah,
parents.
and then it's fixed. Yeah.
You're fixed. You're fixed again, even
Yeah.
more than you could have been fixed before.
And he's a good person, and on
Yeah.
paper it looked like we should have been the dream couple. And honestly, for a while we kind of were, like we were both in school, and so he was working hard and I was working hard, and we traveled together. We knew a lot of the same people. It was very interconnected and meshed.
Mhm.
And he, however, we didn't have, I'm trying to tactfully say this, we didn't have we didn't have chemistry. And now, when I look back at that, I understand it's because when this stuff happened with my first, that early situation, none of that was addressed. And so I
Mhm.
picked someone that was never going to threaten me
Right.
in that way. But
You
that's
never have to worry
all
about that.
unconscious,
Oh, yeah.
completely unconscious.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that was okay, and I loved him and we still love each other, but we had very different drives. I'm very sensual, sexual person. So within the confines of marriage, I wanted to have stuff. And he was like, I'm busy. I'm a surgeon. I can't. I don't want to, that kind of thing. So you can imagine then the dance at nighttime when we would go to bed. It would be like I was making a request, he was rejecting me, and it was night after night. And I started to feel really bad about myself. My self-esteem took a big hit. We're talking years and years. Anyway, that went on. Finally, we got pregnant pretty quickly after, when we decided to do that. And my son, his delivery was a disaster. I mean, the whole pregnancy was just a wreck. I was one of those people who vomited up until the, fifth month. Yeah, it was really bad. And then I had an abruption. So I wound up like having to be on bed rest. And then his delivery was very traumatic. I think they calculated like 80% of my blood I lost. And
Wow.
I was rushed into the ER for an emergency hysterectomy. And so my expectations around what birth was going to be like was like, which I should add, I did not have to have the hysterectomy because I had an amazing doctor, but that's what they were rushing me to do because I was bleeding out.
No, but this is more like a more sexual trauma. Like
Well, it's all that area, right? Like
exactly.
none of this stuff had
Exactly.
ever been addressed. And I didn't learn
Mhm.
that until years later. But anyway, same kind of thing. We're repeating the pattern here. So it was like I woke up from this and everyone was like, "Oh my God, you're awake." And my first words were, "Am I dead?" And someone said, "No, you're okay." And the baby wasn't with me. He had to go to the NICU. And so it became this weird thing of like, I wanted to tell somebody like how unwell I was. I did not feel good. I had had a near death experience. There was a lot that happened, which I won't get into. It's all in my exciting book here, but I had a really crazy experience, very clear, like a death experience where I won't even get into the whole thing, but I came out of that and I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to tell people I had seen the other side and I knew what was there. And people were like, "Honey, let that go. The baby's here. You have, you're
To
fine."
keep this baby alive now.
Right.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
okay, let's make sure you can nurse and let's make sure,
Mhm.
and all that. And I was like, but I saw the other side. I saw the edge. Like, I had some downloads, man,
Yeah.
and they were like, focus on the baby.
It's
You
the
got
same thing. You had
little
this big
extra.
experience and you're like,
Yes.
quiet, just
Yes.
quiet.
Yeah.
Now you've gotta do the thing that you're
Now you
Yep.
got
supposed
to
to do
Yep.
say, look
now.
at the
Yeah.
cute outfit that you got,
Yeah.
look at the blanket. And so I really learned it was again that like silence, be quiet,
Yeah.
you're talking too much.
Yep.
So I did. I never talked about it ever again. I was a good girl. Tried to be the best mother I could be. I loved being a mother. I love my son. He's, going to be 25 soon. He's 26. He's amazing. But it began the sidelining of
Mhm.
like what you feel does not matter.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
Dismiss yourself
none
over
of
and
it.
over. Yep. Yep.
So this whole idea of self-care, when people started to like later, when people started to talk to me about that, I had no concept of self-care. Did not understand it. When even people talked about loving yourself, I was like, what do you mean
No, I
loving
talk about this a lot. I'm like, as a full-fledged Gen Xer myself, along with you, like we were sold this dream that we should and can do everything.
everything?
Yeah, and we have trickled that down to our kids. And Jen, you're not Gen X, you're like on the
I'm
fringe.
right on the cusp, but I will
Yes.
tell
Mhm.
you that
Yep.
trickle, yeah, I mean, I'm in the same position, that I was
Mhm.
taught to be that way, to do those things.
Yeah.
That is my
Productivity.
yeah,
And by the way,
yeah,
you get to go to college and you get to juggle all this stuff, like, that was
yep,
exciting, like, that was an exciting
yeah, I mean, you
time.
you make shit happen, and that's all there
Yep.
is to it, and you leave everything. I mean, my god, my LLC is called Make Things Happen. I
Oh
mean,
my
that's my LLC.
Mine's Raz to the rescue.
So it's
Mine's
just like
inner
right?
strength.
Oh my
Lame. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, but for me, like, that's the same I was taught that. That is what was my parents would I was That was what was given
Holy
to me.
crap, 3
So
overachievers, you know?
it
Oh,
is.
1, 2,
It
3. Yes,
it's yeah, you may
exactly.
as well
Mhm,
just put the numbers right on there because I may not
mhm,
be in that same age group, but I am an old soul 100%.
mhm.
I was born at the wrong time. I was given a different set of values. Shit, I do not I go back to the 70s for music. Like give me the 70s all day long. And I'll be happier than if you give me this 90s stuff. But anyways, but
So
that is all very
anyway,
real.
so the
Yep.
way this worked out then was that now I'm not only just holding this like complex sexual trauma from early in life, but now I've had this horrible delivery, same region,
Yep.
and I'm like, no one wants to hear that either. And so I just held it all together. And I was also went back to, it was like, it was kind of boring. Like I'm a mover. We're movers and shakers,
That's
right?
We
right.
are.
And so
Mhm.
I was like,
Yep.
oh my God, the dishes and the laundry and the diapers, like I gotta do something. And I asked my husband if he would be willing to like take a day off so that I could have something once a week. And he said no. He said, like, no, I'm the primary breadwinner. How's that supposed to work? No. And there were days that he was taking half days off to go golfing, but he wasn't coming to he
To
wasn't
help.
to help.
Mhm.
Exactly, wasn't to parent. So I did that for a long, long time. And then roundabout, well, I mean, I guess it wasn't that long before I ended up getting Medicaid. So 5 years I did that. And then the insomnia. I just, from the time my son was born, I never really got the sleep back. They're crying, you're
Sure.
nursing, la, la, la. But then he was getting in and out of bed and all that stuff.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't stop.
oh, right. And
I
then it
mean
was
it at
potty
all.
training and all that. And he was a good baby. Like he was an easy baby. So it wasn't like he was making all those demands, but I was awake and alert and all this.
Mhm.
Anyway, and around the time he turned 5, I was just not sleeping. And my now ex-husband, but my husband said, you got to go and talk, you got to see a psychiatrist because you're not sleeping. Maybe somebody can give you something. Or he didn't even say a psychiatrist. He said, you got to go see the doctor. So I went to my general practitioner.
Mhm.
He's retired now, but he said, I will refer you to someone. So he referred me to a psychiatrist who within 15 minutes
Mhm.
diagnosed me with anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, and,
What?
and borderline personality disorder.
Oh,
What?
oh,
It wasn't even
oh,
the stuff. It
that's
was
the
like
icing on the cake right there.
Oh my god. Are
That
you
so
serious?
okay,
15 minutes.
that blows my mind. Like,
What?
more so okay, that is like that is a characterological feature of somebody that requires understanding their life.
Everything about that person.
Everything about them to put a personality disorder on somebody.
15
Th
minutes. I
that is
filled
oh
out a
my god.
Can I
questionnaire.
just ask you, well, number 1, did you believe it? At Did you like, because you got these labels, did you then believe the labels?
So I wasn't sleeping. So I was
Mhm.
very emotional, and
Mhm.
crying. I was anxious for sure. I was
Mhm.
anxious because I wasn't
I was
sleeping.
gonna say, 'cause you're not sleeping.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And still, by the way, I had never changed a diaper before my child's own diaper. Like as a babysitter, I was like, I like the older kids.
Yeah.
As a teacher in my previous incarnation, I had the high schoolers. Like I was not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
little, please don't
Yeah.
give me those. So I didn't have experience. So I was an anxious
Very anxious.
mother. Yeah.
Yes, worried about everything.
I was on bed rest for the last part of my pregnancy because of the, stuff. And so I never even got like the classes that people get. So I had anxiety. And then bipolar, I was up and down, I was like
Sure.
emotional. And so I was like, oh my God, I don't know what this other one is. So all I can say to you is when you hit on that, Dr. T, I remember going in the car and bawling my eyes out, holding these scripts.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's your story, Terry.
Really?
Yeah. How
Bawling.
many scripts she had?
I had Lamictal, um, Klonopin, Prozac. They gave me 3 right out the gate. And actually, that's not true. It was Prozac and Lamictal right out the gate. And then he gave me Klonopin later when I failed.
You
Yeah.
failed.
SSRI.
You
You
Yes,
fail
I
yeah.
you're a
failed.
failure.
I had a manic Anyway, I know
You had you had a manic experience on that
yeah,
stuff? You're
on the
like, "Oh,
Prozac,
yeah. Okay,
on
well,
the
that just
Prozac.
means you mean more. That's all that means."
Of course. I was twitching and I was like, "Is my eye twitching? Do you guys see it?" And people were like,
You didn't ride it out long enough. You're
You did
supposed to
not. You
just
didn't
let
take
it
a
go longer. Yeah, it didn't take long enough.
weeks, so you should maybe we need to try another. They shifted me to
Oh my god.
Zoloft, and then I tried a third one. So it was Prozac, Zoloft, Celexa, and then I went back to this doctor, and he said, "You failed." He literally used these words: "You failed SSRIs. So now we're going to give you a benzodiazepine." And I was like,
Oh, Jesus.
I wish we had enough in us at these moments to be like, "No, your treatment failed me." Like,
I believed that I was ruined.
I know.
I was ruined
That's
as
the
way
trauma.
back when
Yeah.
I was 17, I was ruined.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
this is clearly what it means to be ruined. This is what it is. This is now now there's words for it. Now there's a code for it.
Right.
So
Yes.
when you asked if I believed it, I had that experience of that's the beginning of the gaslighting, right? Where it was like, oh, there is something wrong with me, but here's the pills to fix it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is gonna change my life.
This
And
So-
it did. It sure did.
So for you then the Klonopin is it for that one is one that you talk about a little bit more than the others. So
Others were like they tried, they were on and off, it was 2 weeks, but we now know that stuff, it all has a cumulative effect to your brain is like, okay, this is what she wants, and then you take it off and then you try something else, and
yes.
your brain's like, okay, this is what she wants, and so you get that kindling effect in your brain that like it has a cumulative effect. But the Klonopin is the one that I took for 7 years.
Okay.
And for most of that period, that's the only, if I had a pill box, that's the only thing that was in there. So I really do attribute the damage to the benzodiazepines.
So can you talk then a little bit about that? So I know in your bio, when I was reading it, there's some general information on symptomology. Can you share with us what it was that you experienced?
So my journey's a little weird, or maybe it's not weird because I've talked to so many people. It's not unusual, but I was fine on the benzos for a long time. In fact, I used to refer to them as a miracle drug.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Because within 15 minutes of popping that sucker, I was out.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have insomnia, it was like so relaxing to just know I'm going to take that and I'm going to get the effect that I want. But now I think of that as like someone gave me a bottle of vodka and said, drink till you black out.
Yep.
Pretty much. That's pretty much what it is. Mm-hmm.
Now in a different pill, in pill form. So, and I would never have done that. I would have walked out of that office. Anyway, long story longer, I guess, is that round about the 7th year, I went to go see my doctor and there was a note on the door. And it said, Dr. So-and-so has decided, to take an early retirement. You need to go back to your primary care. And
a note on the door. What is
what in the world?
Like this? Okay, everybody, this is not 40, 50, 60 years ago, by the way.
So the only thing I knew about the drug was
Couldn't have sent you an email.
no email. They were so
Letter
bad.
in the mail.
He was old. And there was no. It was so many things. He's lost his. So anyway, I went to my primary care and I learned from him, my primary guy. He said, "Oh, Renee, he lost his license due to improper prescription practice."
Shit.
And I said, "Really? What was he prescribing?"
Klonopin.
No, that was like my denial. Like,
yeah, really? What was he giving to other people? Because this was good for me.
Damn, Lucky Charms.
God. Did not register. So my doctor was like, "I hate to tell you this, but you're going to need an addiction specialist." And I was like,
"What?
Addiction specialist? I have never taken more than was prescribed." And he's like, "Your body is dependent." And
what a great doctor, though. Props.
Yep.
Props to that doctor right there who used the word addiction too.
He's retired now, but I will give him his name.
Yes, your brain is
Will he come on the podcast? You think?
His name is Dr. John Andolina, and he is
He's in
named
the book.
He's in the book.
Trying to Release.
Shameless self-promotion right here. Come on the podcast.
He's retired, and he was the one. He apologized to me for sending me in the first place. He didn't know, but this is what happens. So anyway, I went to the addiction specialist. Her name is Dr. Patricia Halligan. She's amazing, and but for the grace of God, she lived in Rochester. And she knew how to taper. She was following the Ashton manual, and she knew that you can't just pull it off of it. So slow medically, like you referred to with my bio, slow medically supervised taper, 10 months. The thing that we didn't get right was we didn't switch to a water titration or a liquid titration at the end. Yep. She crossed me over to Valium when I got down low enough on so Klonopin is about 15 to 20, it depends on what I say, between 15 and 20% times stronger. So Klonopin is about 15 to 20 times stronger than Valium. So when I got down to that tiny, tiny crumb of Klonopin, now we know that you could either continue to do like a continue on that medication, but we crossed over to Valium so that I could continue to taper. And then when I got down to as low as I could go on the Valium, which was like 0.125, I thought we were done. She was out of town. I couldn't get a message to her. And so I stopped it, and I had a cascade of symptoms. It was real scary.
It's crazy. It's always that last little bit. Like and people think that it's the, smooth sailing up front, like up top, the big ones. And then that last little bit.
Yeah. And Mark Horowitz talks about that. And I don't it's hard for me to explain it, but it's that stuff on your receptors, like the little, So anyway, so that last bit, it just exploded. And so I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. I was rocking, like you see autistic. Like I was rocking. Yeah. I think it was like trying to self-soothe.
Like horrible akathisia when you're rocking the movements. Yep.
Tardive dyskinesia, which is the uncontrollable body movements, the pacing. And then I had paranoia. Like I looked around the house and I saw like there were outlets that had multiple plugs in them. And I was like, this house is going to burn down. I'm going to die. The windows don't open. It was just really, really strange. So, my story goes on and on with my book, and people can obviously read it, but that was how it all fell apart. And then basically I was on my own. I did not have a support system I'm a good researcher. So when I finally was able to get on a computer, I did Google like clonazepam and like that withdrawal effects or something like that. And I found a woman, and I won't say her name because I don't think she is wanting to do this anymore, but she really helped me. She had been through this, and she was the first person to help me. And then, I don't want to wreck my whole book, but like I was really depressed and going to kill myself because I couldn't see a way out of this. And like doctors were telling me that they've never seen this before. Everyone was telling me that I need to take more medication, that this was evidence that I was completely wrecked. And so I was contemplating unaliving myself. And I was sitting outside of a building, and a woman came up to me and saw me crying. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I am not." And I told her what was going on. And she said, "Do you want to come home with me?" And you guys, I didn't even ask her name. I got up, I followed her like a puppy to her car, and she brought me home with her. And it turns out she had been through this experience. And her name is Renee McLean. She runs a wellness center. Like it's called.
Oh my God.
I know. It's like, right. Like this.
Talk about the universe giving you exactly what you needed, right?
Absolutely. And so she brought me home with her. And we have the same name and all that. And anyway, she taught me about juicing, supplementation, that these drugs deplete your magnesium and other things, so she taught me about how like good diet. She taught me Oh
The
my
miss
God.
she taught you the missing pieces of
She
all of
taught me the
this.
missing pieces, and she gave me community. Her family, I
Mhm.
lived with her family. Can you imagine? She brought me in, and her children were there, and they're like, "Oh, you're not the first stray mom's brought home."
That's awesome.
And
That's
so
awesome.
amazing. And so she actually does breath work, so somatic respiratory integration. I was like living with my therapist for a
Mm.
year. And by then so then when I went home and I sort of looked at my husband and the family system and all that, I was like, I am not getting what I need here at all. And then I went to rehab. Like, then I went to a rehab, and then I came home and I was like, I got to get out of here. This is a toxic environment for me, because everyone was like, oh, you're doing a little bit better. Back to cooking and cleaning and like taking
Yep.
care of. And I was like, I needed therapy. I needed a lot of work. And so I went and did my own healing journey, which involved, like you were saying, EMDR and CBT and DBT and body work and John Barnes massage and like all different kinds and EFT tapping and like all move
Like the self-care that you
all
Yes.
never
That
learned
yes,
about.
the
Mhm.
the
self-care.
self-care and just the allowing myself to feel and grieve for this younger girl who like did
Yeah.
not get what she needed. And so all that. And so now, so while I was going through that, I started having these visions like and hearing words, and I started painting. And so painting became, instead of that like rush, hurry up, like get things done, I started painting. And it's 10 years later, and my artwork is hanging in like people's private collections all over the world. And
Yes.
that to me is a miracle. Like when you're talking about the universe and divine intervention, I mean, I was being asked to do something else. And
Mhm.
so one of the things I do want to just sort of throw in here, because I know we're getting like to the time, but people who are going through this, you feel so helpless and hopeless. And I know it's like a little bit of maybe it's cliche now, but that idea that the universe is, things aren't happening to you, they're happening for you. It's both. Things are happening to you. But I never could have imagined that my former English teacher self would not be able to read or write. Like that was my modus operandi. And then, but during this healing, something else started to emerge, which is that like I could paint, and that people liked my paintings. And so now I really use my artwork as a as a tool to really talk about psychiatric medication harm, because I never did this before my injury. And it wasn't like I came out of it wasn't like everything was like a beautiful picture at first, but it was like everything else. It was a re-education and a relearning about myself. And you spend 10,000, right? That's that Malcolm Gladwell thing. You spend 10,000 hours doing something and you get good at it. Well, when you're in withdrawal and you're as sick as I was, which not everybody is, but I was laid out for from 2013 was gone. 2014 was gone. My first painting I put out was April of 2014, and then slowly, I just kept painting and painting and painting. Launched a website in 2017. So there was a lot of painting without anything happening for a long time. It was just my coping skill. It was a coping skill, not a business plan.
Right.
But now it's like, oh my gosh, something was happening. I was getting a different kind of an education. And that's spiritual thing. That's spiritual awakening, that like God, the universe, Gaia, whatever you want to call it. All of this was like a cosmic correction. Like I call it a little cosmic ass kicking. I got off my path somewhere. I got off my path, got some bad advice, didn't get to know myself, just was sort of doing what people told me within the lines. And there's this whole other part of me that I just never had a chance to explore until I had to.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
really like who I am now. And I love what I do. And I love helping other people to figure this stuff out.
I just wanna say if you're watching this on YouTube or even listening to Renee talk right now, it's it's tough because we see this version of you. And so there's so many people out there that are like in the depths of darkness right now with this stuff. And so even the believability of the story now from who you are to then is just interesting to me. So I want to caution people that when you see her now, this is because of healing. This is because
Yeah.
of what she's done for herself
Yeah.
and been an active participant in it.
Yes, because
And
can I piggyback on that for a
yeah.
second? There
Mhm.
is a perception out there, and you guys correct me
Mhm.
if I'm wrong, that you just have to wait, that you just
Right.
sit on the couch and it's gonna go away.
Well, I think that's the perception for a lot of med tapering period, that it's just this taper off and then we're done and
Yep.
I just sit. I believe that med tapering of any type of medication is an active, you have to be an active participant in this and you have to change some things.
Yeah.
Whether it's, working on your trauma or changing the food that you put in your
Or your
mouth, like,
job
Yeah.
that you hate
or
every
your job or
It
your
is
marriage or yes,
relationship.
it's a
lifestyle.
lifestyle
Yes.
change.
It
Yes.
could be
Because most of the time, that's the stuff that got you into this in the first place. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
it would be interesting to figure out what was really happening, with your sleep to know, like,
Oh,
if somebody just would have done some sleep work with you, probably would have changed the whole trajectory for you earlier. Not on meds, the way that they did. I feel like
yeah.
you're like
I mean,
bursting to say something. Go ahead.
it was just so connected because
Mhm.
my parents are so in love with each other. I grew up in a family where there's a lot of physical touch and
Mhm.
there was just this absence of connection. So
Yeah.
even if they had done the sleep work for me in my head, bed is not just for sleeping. It's for cuddling. And
Right.
I mean, if we called my parents right now at noon, they're in bed. They are doing
They're doing stuff.
they're doing stuff, y'all. They're watching, they hang out, they do, the only thing they don't do in there is eat. But they're in bed. Like I grew up seeing that. And not that I needed that, but I knew that
Needed
bed,
something.
I
Yes.
Mhm.
needed that. And so for
Yeah.
me, the insomnia, I'm real clear, was a need was not being
Mhm.
met. And the universe
Yeah.
trying to show me that like something's not right. It's
Mhm.
it's the car, it's the warning system of your car
Yep.
saying something's, not right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
overrode it.
It's
I overrode it with the
like
medicine.
the check engine light. Yeah. Quit putting a piece of black tape over it so you don't have to
Right,
look at it.
right.
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 Emergency at that point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and people take better care of their cars than they do
Yes.
their own
They
body.
do.
Put
And
in
and
And
their
I
pets too, by the way.
yeah.
gasoline, washing that thing, waxing that thing, but
Mhm.
eating McDonald's and crap and,
I gotta bring this up. So you were talking about your painting, okay, and you were talking about all the work, like this is the front of your
cool.
book that you wrote, and I know you created the cover to this.
I
This
did.
is all you.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So for anybody that is on YouTube and that's watching us on YouTube right now, I just wanted to show you what the publication that Renee has put out looks like. And once again, it's
That was my COVID project. I
yeah.
wrote it during the lockdown because how much art can you make? And then I mean, I was doing a lot of classes online, but I needed to do something else. And by then, I also wanted to say I was writing it. I'm writing again. I'm up my, this is.
Mhm.
But so I
Yeah.
started doing that, and I teach memoir writing classes, so it was like a natural that the time was
Sure.
then. And then it was published in November of 2021, and so it was just a natural progression of like so many people wanted to know my story. I didn't want to say it over and over
Mm,
again, but
yeah.
it
Yeah,
is
it's
there.
the stifling of this creativity. Just to real quickly, so we had Brooke Seam on the show a couple episodes ago, and it was interesting to me because she became a painter and her stuff is so cool too. She wrote a book, like all these things, and I'm like, God, if we would just maybe stop chemically restraining our creativity, imagine what kind of world we would live in, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I believe I believe that's what's happening. It's by design. All the feelers, the artists, the
Mhm.
creativity, whatever. All these
Mm.
spicy neuro brains out
Right.
there that are now like taking ADD medication to make them.
Right.
It's like we need those neuro spicy brains. We need these different ways of thinking. The connectors are being medicated. The emotional
Mhm.
people who are the bridges. I'm the one people always go to with their problems, but if I'm medicated, I can't help you. I'm going to tell you to take pills. So,
Right.
so I do believe that we are in the middle of a huge paradigm shift right now, which is
Mhm.
very exciting. And you guys are part of it. You're spearheading
You
Oh yeah, we
know,
are.
it.
we're spearheaders now.
We are
Pioneers,
spearheaders. Yeah.
spearheaders, whatever.
Well,
Anyway, any way to bring these
spearheaded,
well,
tenacious.
any way to bring
you know.
these messages forward and for our listeners to understand that there is light and hope at the end of the tunnel here. But you do
Yeah.
need to be an active participant in your life to get there. And I think that's the message too. Like, we were doing life, right? Especially Gen X. We were doing life, but I don't know that I could call myself a real active participant in my life. I was doing life, but I don't know that I was participating in my own life, you
Mhm.
know?
I relate
So,
to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of Gen Xers would relate to that
I wouldn't
actually.
have seen it that way at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, no. I was doing what I should be doing,
Yeah. But
Mhm.
Yeah.
now it's pretty crazy when you see it a different way, you can't unknow what you know now. Like,
Yeah.
there just is no other explanation for it other than being able to see it differently now, and
Yeah.
it makes it you
And
can't
I
ever
will just
get rid of
say
that.
that I'm so blessed that my parents are both still alive. And so they've seen me go into this hole and come out of it. And it has changed them. It
Oh
has
yeah.
made we've had the opportunity to work on our stuff that I got to go back and say to my mother, you said some terrible things to me.
Yeah.
And she was just telling me what she was told,
That's right.
Yep.
and all that. So we had a chance to really clear that, and our relationship is better than ever. So healing isn't just like getting off the medication, like you're saying,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like it's all the stuff that brought you there, and making amends and fixing it,
Mhm.
and having those hard conversations, and then it's so much better. So they are proud of me now. Like, I mean, not that they weren't before, but they're proud of me
You
that
know it now.
yeah, yeah. And I know
Mhm.
it too. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
whether they're proud of me or not, I'm proud of me
E
now, but
exactly.
a blessing that I have them behind me too. They were always there.
Nice.
I just didn't know.
Yes.
Well, this has
Yes.
been really thank you, Renee, for giving us the time for you to share this story. Thank you. It's been fantastic. And I think as you were speaking, there was a couple times where I was on this end, like I started getting teary eyed because I can sit in so many things that you're saying. And that's the beauty of this too, is we're a community that is brought together now by the pain and all the bullshit that we've gone through, right? Like, there's this whole community that forms now, and I know people listening to this feel exactly the same exact thing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is the real positive side to the internet, right? That like I
Yeah.
didn't have
Yeah,
to sit inside my house suffering. I mean, how could you make it? And
right.
I
Right.
had the internet to do that initial research, and then all this over the last 10. I mean, this wasn't here when I was going through it 10
Yeah.
years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it was not.
In coalition surviving. I mean, this stuff wasn't there, but it's here now, and it's gonna help so many people. So not
Yeah.
alone.
Well,
Well, thank
thanks.
you for being on the show. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for
And for anyone listening, make sure that you like, follow, share, subscribe, and apparently now you can send us fan mail. So
Yes, we get fan mail. It's fantastic. We've gotten fan mail from all over the United States. Some of it is very intriguing. So please feel free to send us some fan mail if you want.
that's right.
And, you can find us on anywhere that you're going to be listening to podcasts. You can hear us, or you can get us on all the socials. We are the Gaslit Truth Podcast. And for those of you that still use good old email, you can hit us at the Gaslit Truth Podcast at gmail.com. And thank you, Renee, for being here today.
Thanks, guys.
We appreciate it.